LM. I am here at the Barker Marchant Show. Thank you for tuning in again. Today is Tuesday, April the 21st, and I must say that it has been a fabulous day weather-wise. I hope that you are doing well, and your loved ones, your families, and that you are just getting off to a raring start for this new week and just enjoying spring. Having said that, I'm a little late with this, I will admit. I've been thinking about the topic, wasn't quite sure how to address it, but I thought let me just go ahead and say a few words anyway. So here's a little bit of my usual food for thought. Adapt says Isaiah Washington. First of all, what in the world does he mean by that? First of all, Isaiah Washington is someone who was ostracized by Hollywood when he made derogatory comments about a fellow cast member from the uber successful Grey's Anatomy, another vehicle of Shonda Rhimes, who was obviously the cat's meow for network ABC's broadcasting channel, no question about that. Definitely someone who has been very successful in her chosen profession. Washington could say the same. That is until he chose to make comments about another cast member being a homosexual, although he did not say it in quite those terms. It was a really offensive, the term that he used, derogatory to say the least. I mean, we all know what it means when somebody's calling another person a fag. It's not very attractive, and unless you're in Britain where it means cigarette, it's not a good thing to do. Obviously, everyone is different in this world. We all have our issues. We all have the right to live our lives the way that we choose. Depending on your religious beliefs, you still don't have the right to tell other people how to live. And I don't know if Washington meant anything. He did try to retract his statement and try to say that he was probably teasing. And that is all well and good. Unfortunately, it did not save his job. Washington was making in excess of $100,000 per episode. Can you imagine what his account was looking like at the time? And maybe if he was a wise investor, he was able to make sure that he had annuity set up. And of course, that's for another show. We're not talking about finances here. We're talking about Washington and his decision to make a comment about Chris Rock's recent conversations about his own run-ins with law enforcement 3 times in the course of 1 month. Now, Rock is a very successful comedian, somebody who has been also very successful in film ever since he first came to nationwide attention as a member of Saturday Night Live, the long-running comedy series. Now, that is great. I mean, he's had a really phenomenal career. I mean, he's been able to produce, he's been able to write, direct, and all those wonderful things. So obviously life has been good to Chris. So Chris decides he wants to drive a Benz. I mean, I think that's his right, as it should be the right of anyone who can actually afford to drive an expensive foreign job. Some people prefer American, but it doesn't really matter. I think the main gist of the conversation here that Rock was bringing to the attention of the public, not that people are not aware, that black men are more likely to be pulled over more than any other race, a lot more frequently. However, maybe Chris felt this was a conversation that needed to be had, same as he did when he had the film Good Hair some years ago, where I guess he felt it was necessary to discuss black women and their hair rituals. Every woman goes through the whole hair thing. I mean, hair is something that a lot of people obsess about, not just in this country in America, but also across the globe. So it's just one of those things. So he made a film of that, and it was pretty successful. But not to get off track here. Let's just get right back to the gist of the conversation that we're having. First of all, Washington thought that perhaps if he states, really, this is simply what he said himself. I'm not paraphrasing. Maybe I am paraphrasing, but I'm certainly not taking out the meaning of what he was saying when he was interviewed on this topic. And he said that basically he felt like Rock, and I guess other black men too, who've had this happen where they're driving expensive cars, maybe been pulled over by police for whatever reasons, that they need to adapt. That these people need to drive, I don't know, he recommended a Prius. A Prius is still a pretty expensive car, great for the environment, definitely a green thing, but at the same time, it's definitely an investment to drive a Prius. So maybe it's not as high profile as, say, a Benz or a Lamborghini or a Jaguar, but it still is in that class, even though it's in a different category. So let's just face it, Washington, I don't think that somebody driving a Prius, a Benz, a Kia, a Taurus, an Escort, you can name any of the cars that maybe fall down the line, further down the line than your expensive import or your car that essentially is a designer car like your BMW. It really doesn't matter what a person is driving. Let's be honest here. In America, there's such a thing as racism. Race relations between people of color and the white majority, unfortunately, sometimes have been strained. Hell, they've actually been hellish. We know from looking back in the past, even if you weren't alive, you do know to some extent that relations between people of color and people who are not of color weren't really that chummy. They weren't really that close. Such a thing as Jim Crow and segregation, anyone? So I don't know if Washington is familiar with that. And at that time, obviously, no one really cared what someone was driving. It's not really about that. It's about the fact that this Chris Rock, even though he is of celebrity status, he is still one thing for certain. He is still a black man. You cannot deny that fact. And there's nothing wrong with that, although in society, in American society in particular, which is what we're discussing, there are times where people are typically going to encounter those types of circumstances where they are scrutinized more, where they are discriminated against, where they are racially profiled. That is a factor, and that is exactly why Chris Rock has been pulled aside by police officers when he was driving 3 times within the course of 1 month. And unless he's speeding like a demon on the Indianapolis 500, I don't understand why that would be the case. So, or he was suspected of dealing drugs or basically drug trafficking. Again, I don't suspect that's the case. And so simply put, there is a problem. But driving a Prius is certainly not going to solve them. This is something what we need to actually look at, handle, face on, dead on, get your head out the sand like an ostrich, Washington, and people who think like that. It doesn't matter what you drive. Again, when we can go back to the Cosby fiasco. We're not talking about the other fiasco. I'll be talking about that later. You can best believe I'm going to approach that topic because it's definitely one worthy of analyzing because it has been such a major one for this particular, starting last year, and it just keeps on going. It's the story that just never seems to lose traction in the media. So of course we're going to discuss that. But right now we're discussing Washington and the fact that he and people like him have this view that if you choose to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, go to a certain school, drive a certain car, live in a certain neighborhood, you are not going to encounter problems with the mainstream, that you're not going to sometimes be subjected to racially polarizing situations where you are being targeted or you're being sought out mainly because you are of a blacker skin texture or hue, whatever. Regardless of whether you are somebody who is of a Hispanic descent or African American, or maybe you are even just a white person who may be a little bit on the darker side of white, you will probably have a different experience. You may be pulled over more, but the statistics already support the fact that black men are pulled aside off the road for whatever reason by police officers more than any other race in the country. And that's a real issue. And so somebody driving a Prius, it doesn't really matter what these people are driving. They could be driving something as unassuming as a Honda Civic or something. I mean, hey, a Kia, something really inexpensive. They could be driving, should I say it, a hoopsie, something that is tore up from the floor up. I mean, that is just the reality. So frankly speaking, I wish Washington was right. I really wish that if everybody who was maybe going to be subjected to some kind of scrutiny by law enforcement officials were to drive a certain kind of vehicle, dress a certain kind of way, maybe not have their pants sagging the way that Bill Cosby pointed out before, that black men need to pull their pants up, or in this case black kids, because most of the times it's adolescents who dress like that. But I have news for Mr. Cosby and people who think like Mr. Cosby. Not only black kids wear their pants sagging. If you go out to the suburbs, there's a lot of young white adolescents and also Hispanics that choose to embrace that kind of dress code. And it's really pretty much more or less about the hip hop culture than it is anything else racial, or it doesn't even matter. Again, what somebody is wearing doesn't really have an effect on how they're treated. There are a lot of black men out there who will tell you firsthand that they have been approached by law enforcement for no particular reason, and they were basically wearing Brick Brothers suits or the equivalent of such. So, no, Mr. Washington, no, Mr. Cosby. It's a lot deeper than what you drive and what you wear in this country if you are a person of a blacker hue. So let us get that clear. Let's not confuse it, okay? This is not art. It is mathematics, and you cannot take 1 and 1 and give 5. I don't care how many times you try to count it and how to figure it out. It's always going to be 2. So let's just take the bull by the horns. Let's just face the music, and let's stop pretending that we don't live in a society where race matters or does not matter, because damn it does matter, and it matters a great deal, and it absolutely has a lot of people not only feeling racially polarized, feeling like they are condemned. Particularly after the Trayvon Martin incident, you had a lot of young blacks and also some other minority group also were saying how they felt unsafe when they were pulled over by police officers or basically approached that they needed to be seen and talked to. They felt like their lives were perhaps being threatened or that they were in the balance. Now, all police officers and all members of law enforcement are not going to be people who are trigger happy, who are racist. Let's not get that confused. There are some really great people out there who do work within the law enforcement community, who truly care about all people across the board. There's no sense of them even remotely thinking about people as anything but people, and it doesn't matter what the person's ethnic group. So I want to commend all of those law officers out there, anyone who is defending the public to the full extent of his or her ability, and generally speaking, wearing that badge with pride and honor and upholding and serving the public. We want to definitely thank you very much for your service. There's nothing more impressive and something to be respected than people who put their lives on the line every single day of the week. When they go out the door, their loved ones do not know whether they're going to return. So we want to commend those great people, because obviously they deserve to be acknowledged for the good that they do each and every day of the week. When they actually walk the beat, when they get in their patrol cars, when they're there on surveillance, those people do deserve to be recognized in a positive manner. However, there's always going to be another side and another angle to every story in this world. So you have the truth, you have his truth, her truth, and you have the real truth. So always there's going to be 3 sides, but we already know in life we have good people and we have people who are bad, and that's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is in the world where we live. So I want to thank you so much for listening to me. I know I went off a little bit on a rant, didn't mean to do that, just kind of came out of nowhere, but as you know, sometimes it's good to get it out. It can be kind of cathartic, especially for someone like me. I just wanted to address the topic. I just kind of kept thinking about it, mulling it over, and I just felt like, hey, I want to find out what it is on your minds. What do you think about what Washington said? Is it really just a matter of adapting to a situation? Is it true that you should be respectful when approached by members of law enforcement and they ask you for your identification, or they think you've been speeding and they need to see your driver's license? Yes, most definitely. You definitely do not want to do anything that is going to exacerbate a situation and make it any more volatile or less peaceful than it should and needs to be. You want to maintain your calm, and you more than likely, most definitely, always want to respect authority. And that is something that every parent should teach every child that he or she is raising. You don't want to leave your child out there not knowing how to interact with members of authority, and that means the teacher, the doctor, the lawyer, and most definitely the police officer. So I'm not saying that what happened to anyone who's been shot, if their child has been shot in cold blood, our condolences, deep condolences to the Martin family and any family who suffered a loss of that magnitude. Because obviously you do have people, in that case, Zimmerman was not really even a true police officer. He was a security patrol officer. That's totally a different thing. So I don't want to confuse that, because I don't want to take anything away from police officers, people who went through the academy and all that extensive training. There's a total difference there. Total difference. But at the same time, it calls to mind the possibility that maybe people who are just doing night patrols and neighborhood community patrol officers, those kind of people, they probably don't need to carry firearms. I don't know. Or they need more training perhaps to know when to pull a trigger and when not. And if some person is unarmed, they're not really a danger, maybe more than likely you want to hold off firing. But anyways, I'm going to run along right now because I've got lots more to do. I'm sure you do too. I just want to hear what you think. Is it a matter of just adapting, or is it time for us to come to the table as citizens of America and have a real conversation and stop pretending that just because Barack Obama is in office as a biracial president of the United States, that this world has changed and that we truly are living in a universe where one's ethnicity doesn't matter. Maybe one day that will be true, but unfortunately, America is still pretty much judging by a lot of the things that's out there in the cyber world and also within the real world that we live and breathe in each and every day when we go to work, that there is room for improvement in race relations across the board. And that yes, we do still live in a world where race matters, and it's unfortunate. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that all of you, wherever you may be, you are doing well, you are thriving, not just living and surviving. And until you can thrive, just know that it's great just to be alive. So live every moment like every day is your last. Because one day, let's be honest, we're not going to be here anymore. So love the ones you love and treat other people with the dignity, the class, and the respect that you want to receive in return. Thank you so much for listening to me. And take care for now.